us have heard bad arguments for abortion. We've heard things such as, overpopulation, the rape exceptions, life of the mother, things like that. Bad pro-abortion arguments. But what some of us are granted the rare opportunity to hear is stupid arguments. Last week, a brother of mine, Chris Rush, actually got to hear what has found its way to the top of my stupid argument list. And outside of a high school doing a project Frontlines, he had a teacher from the school come out and tell him that we're not human until we have a social security number. I'm not lying. I'm not joking. I'm not even being sarcastic. If you go down below the video right now, into the description box, there's going to be a link to his YouTube video of a teacher saying this. It really happened. Now see, there were three things that came out of Chris's video, though, that I really wanted to touch on. Two lessons that I think we can take from Chris himself, but another one I think is really important. And first and foremost is when you hear these types of arguments. Now I'm not talking about bad arguments. There's, like I said, the overpopulation argument. This is something that can be argued against. This is a really bad, it's like an old wives' tale, except it's a new tale, and it's stupid. I'm talking about dumb, stupid arguments. These, 100% of the time, you're going to find that the person that's using the argument has in some way been a part of having an abortion themselves. In this teacher's case, he was a man, and he actually came back the next day and confessed that he had been a part of an abortion, I believe, 3 years earlier. You're going to find that that is the case. Because people who commit sin will say anything and do anything and justify anything in order to keep justifying their sins. For example, I've talked to people who have had abortions, who support abortion, who are then willing to tell me that, what Hitler did wasn't really bad because it was legal, or it was culturally accepted at the time. And so again, this is where you're going to see those stupid arguments. And the reason I think it's important to know where they're coming from is because you are going to talk to somebody who has had an abortion in a slightly different manner than you'll talk to somebody who is just pro-choice or pro-abortion. Now, what we saw with Chris's response, though, I think is where we can take two really powerful lessons. First and foremost, Chris did not give up any ground. His response, he pointed out, well, so the however million people in Africa, they're not human. This is a solid response because he's giving no legitimacy whatsoever to the teacher with the stupid argument. And we see this in the pro-life movement all the time, in their trainings, in their whole let's find common ground with the atheist and let's find common ground with murderers and sinners and wicked people and evil people. They give ground. They literally hand over legitimacy to these arguments. First thing that we don't want to do. And so Chris rocked it out right there by throwing out an argument and throwing out a response that gave no justification, no legitimacy whatsoever to a bad pro-abortion argument. Now, second off, and I think the most important lesson that we can take, is that Chris's argument was Chris's argument. You see, when I first heard, because he just posted on Facebook about it, and I heard that this teacher had said this, I thought of like 40 different arguments that I would have used. I didn't have in my mind the argument that Chris used. I had some that were similar, but that's probably not the argument that I feel like I would have gone straight for. Now, this doesn't change that it was a good argument, that it was a very logical, rational, biblical response. It's just not the one that I probably would have gone for, but it was his. Because you see, Chris, first and foremost, had insight that I didn't. Even after watching the video, I don't know the whole situation. I don't know the people that were around. I'm not from, I believe he's from Minnesota. I'm not from the Minneapolis or Minnesota. I don't know their culture. I don't know how they communicate. I don't know their nuances. I don't know this school. I don't know previous conversations. There's all these factors that I can't know. And it's your job as the abolitionist on the ground to be taking those things into consideration. We've talked with some of the women who are in Melbourne, Australia, with the Abolitionist Society out there. And they don't understand some of the things that we say and do. And I don't understand some of the things they say and do, because we have cultural differences. My not understanding it doesn't invalidate the good work that they're doing. It just means that I don't understand it because I'm not an Aussie. On top of that, though, was that Chris was comfortable using this. To be honest, as an African-American man, it was very comfortable, very easy, very natural for him to resort to that argument. It's the natural path that fits him. Whereas I would take a different road sometimes, maybe. And I have brothers and sisters right here in my city who will take different approaches, different tactics, different responses, and they're all good, right, correct, biblical, godly, gospel-centric arguments. But the key is that they're ours. You see, I've made all of these training videos, and sometimes I've even laid out scripts for how to respond to something. And if you're new on the streets and you've never been out there before, or you're just getting your feet wet and you're trying to get your grasp on things, by all means, take the script that I provide or that you can find on Chris's All Hands on Deck radio show, or that you can find on Abolitionist Radio. We lay these out, and if you're new to the game, by all means, take that script and read it verbatim. You know, we say these things because experience shows that they work. So if you don't have something that works, use it. But as you grow and as you mature and as you get the experience of being out there and talking, these things are made so that you can learn how to respond on your own. Because my argument isn't your argument. You know, it's almost funny to see sometimes when I'm out with my brothers and sisters from our church and things, when we're evangelizing, a lot of times, like, I come in with this really hard-hitting mentality. I come in and I go straight for the kill sometimes. I believe very firmly in what William Lloyd Garrison said, and that I will be as harsh as truth. My favorite stories about Jesus are him whipping the tax collectors, and whipping the merchants in the temple, and about him calling the Pharisees broods of vipers and, like their father, the devil. That's my personality. That's where I fit. But I got this sister who comes in and she just, like, loves people. And she wraps her arms around people. And people can actually feel the love coming out of her. Neither one of us are better than the other one. We each have our own way. And if we tried to always follow a script and we tried to always do things in an identical way, we'd end up in a dangerous place. Because I'd be coming and trying to exude this merciful love that my personality doesn't always fit. I mean, love and mercy are definitely part of what I want to show, but not in the same way. And it would make me awkward, it would make me uncomfortable, it'd probably make me seem a little bit creepy. But then if she came off and she tried to be, you know, very, very confrontational and very direct and more of an agitator, she would seem almost robotic. She wouldn't seem fluid in it, because that's not the personality that God gave her. And so God gave you your own personality, and I want to challenge you to use that personality. When we go out as groups, we have these intricate, different, creative conversations with people. And that is why Jesus sent out disciples instead of a disciple. Because each of us have our strengths and our weaknesses. And we need to learn to play off of them, not only for the greater good and the good of our groups and the good of our societies, but we need to learn how to play off of them for our own betterment, so that we can speak rightly and we can speak effectively. Because if I tried talking like Chris Rush out on the street, I might even get laughed at. And I'd get mocked and I'd get ignored. And if Chris tried responding the way I respond, he'd probably look kind of foolish. But he does work the way he does it. My brothers, my sisters, all over the city of Chicago that I go out and I do work with and I do evangelism with and I do ministries with, they each have a strength, they each have weaknesses, and it's by understanding and knowing who we are, what our personality is, and the gifts that God gave us, that we're able to come together as a cohesive unit, as an abolitionist society, and truly do the work that we need to do.